Well, enough positive thinking like keeping your hair and bald eggs and things like that, because now we have to go to the part of the program where we talk about some of the stupid things that have happened on television this past week. And I must admit, we haven't attempted to stick our toe in the Raw pool for a long time because it's 3 hours. It's just, my God, civil wars in the Middle East have been over quicker than this program. But now, after what's happened on day one, Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman and Bobby Lashley and MVP are appearing on Raw. So I thought I would record this past week's episode just to see what they did and keep track of what's going on with Brock and Reigns and Lashley and the whole 9 yards, because those people we've been interested in. And they didn't disappoint me on Raw, because the very first segment was Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman coming out to the ring for a live in-ring promo. So we're going to get to hear Heyman do what he does best, right? Right?
Well, you would think, right, yes.
Wrong.
Oh.
Paul and Lashley, by the way, is watching the monitor in the back, and suddenly, with MVP, and Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander come up and say, hey, they're all on the team and they're going to fucking help Lashley or whatever. And he's like, no, we're done. The Hurt Business is over. And he tells them to piss off. They're like, okay. And then we go in the ring and there's Brock and there's Paul. And Paul does the big introduction. And Brock is all smiles. Hey, we're back in Philadelphia. And I'm like, where did all this personality come from with this jughead? And Brock starts doing a promo, and he's actually not doing very bad at it because he's just reacting to what's going on. We're back in Philadelphia, hey, Paul, and everything. And suddenly the music interrupts, and here comes Lashley and MVP out to confront Brock and Paul, and MVP does the big introduction of Bobby Lashley. And here's where we fell in a hole, because now Lashley and Brock stepped up face to face and they started talking to each other, Brian. And I love Bobby Lashley, not only as a talent, but as a person. He's a great guy. And we've said that Brock and Paul have been fabulous, but speaking is not Lashley's strong point. And telling a story, hitting bullet points, getting specific lines in is not Brock's strong point. Brock does have the goddamn Alvin and the Chipmunks voice to him that is jarring. It doesn't sound like he should sound like that the way he looks, but still, it's Brock Lesnar and he's legit. So Dan Severn spoke funny too, but he also was the Beast. However, they were doing the material that had been prepared for them and telling the story, and neither one of them, as I mentioned, when they're getting into the details of something and telling that story, they don't have. Brock's got a little more oomph now, but they neither one speak like two massive kick-ass beast like that should speak, and it drug this thing down, in my opinion. It would have been better if MVP and Paul had been handling the verbal jousting and let them do something physical and explosive. Brock even did a knock-knock joke, Brian. And actually, Brock turned around and Heyman said, hey, knock-knock. And Paulie said, okay, I'm back in Philadelphia and Brock Lesnar's telling me knock-knock jokes. Who would have thought? But okay, who's there? And he said, Bobby who? Or Bobby. Bobby who? Exactly. See, it was funny when I did it too. The point is, they're doing knock-knock jokes and they're telling the story to each other. And to me, here's two guys that look like prehistoric fucking beasts. And they're using words that I don't think they really necessarily felt, and neither one of them sounds like Morgan Freeman when he speaks. You know what I'm so you can imagine what was going on here. Anyway, Brock called Lashley a Brock Lesnar wannabe and walked out. There you go. And then that was it for Brock and Paul, and Lashley is standing there with a mean look on his face. And here comes Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin to attack Lashley, and he kills both of them and leaves them laying. And it was an unnecessary distraction from what Brock because it wasn't a horrible interview. So what Brock and Lashley had just said to each other would register, except then Lashley beat the other two guys up and just left them laying and buried them for no reason because it was out of place there and it was a distraction just because Brock verbally blew Lashley off and Lashley got no comeback. I guess they figured, well, we'll make sure that Lashley looks like a badass, but it was a distraction. They could have kept them back for when Lashley needed to lose. And you'd never see them until Lashley needs to lose, and then suddenly they're the reason that Lashley loses. You could have kept that in your back pocket, but instead he wiped them out. And there's Shelton, who can still work better than a large majority of the roster, and he's just being treated like a flunky.